welcome to today's session, today's viewer question and answer time, where I get to offer explanations to questions asked on each and every video across my channel. This very segment today will be covering questions that came in from Sunday the 12th of January 2025 right up to date. So I want us to start with the very first one. And this first question says, how do you crimp RJ11 clips for single line telephones? This is an example of an RJ11 modular plug. And this is what is placed at the end of cables that will be put into telephone sockets. And so the viewer is seeking to know, because single line telephones use only a pair of cables, how do you put in just these two cables into the RJ11 plug? The answer is simple. Even though you require only two conductors for the single line telephones, because we have 4 pins in this connector, it is advisable to use 2 pairs of conductors or 4 cables put into this, whilst the system will use just the 2. That will make it easier for you to easily place your conductors or the Cat 5 or Cat 6 cables into the RJ11 plug. So that is my answer to your question. Let's move on to the next question. And this one says, a network cable like Cat 5 or Cat 6. Okay, let me read it again. The PBS extension port is for RJ11. Can the whole 4 pairs of Cat 5 be crimped in RJ11? Yes, I think that is what I have explained. All the 2 pairs of conductors. Okay, the person is asking the 4 pairs of conductors. No, the 4 pairs of conductors cannot be crimped in an RJ11 modular plug, because this makes provision for only 4 conductors. So you need to select just 2 pairs out of the 4 pairs of conductors and crimp into the RJ11. So that is the answer to it. It's the four conductors that you terminate, and you leave out the rest 4 conductors. That means you are using only 2 pairs terminated onto the RJ11 modular plug. So that is my answer to that. Let's go to the next question. And this next question says, how will you deal with a situation where the distance is more than 100 meters? What would you do to get quality video? And that is about running cables beyond 100 meters. And so what you need to do when setting up TV cameras, and you realize that the more power is that, for example, if you know that the CCTV camera requires the 12 volts DC power to operate. So for instance, you can create a power socket around where that camera will be. That is the camera that will be in the 100-meter distance. You can create a power socket around that camera. You plug a 12 volt DC power adapter on that socket, so I have a shorter cable plugged into your camera. But the video cable can be run, that is, if it's a coaxial cable, you can run it over the long distance. So with that, you'll be able to minimize the effect of low voltage transmitted to your camera. In the case of IP cameras, you can use PoE switches that are placed at distances. Say maybe if you reach 70 meters, you can put a PoE switch there, and then you connect the cable from that PoE switch before it gets to the camera, so that it will mean that you have run the cable 70 meters. You have taken another cable from a PoE switch at the 70th meter right to the camera to reduce the effect of power losses that creates a lot of problems or challenges for the CCTV camera operation. So that is my answer to that one. Let's move on to the next question. And this one says, hello, I like your videos and I've followed through right from installation to this point, but the last step of connection between the camera and the router Wi-Fi isn't connecting. It's saying timeout and reconfiguration. Do I need to reset the camera again? Please help. This is a question about the panoramic CCTV camera, and what I believe is happening, or I suspect might be happening, is that when you try connecting your phone to the panoramic camera, it tells you timed out. That is because you might have spent some time that the hotspot of the camera might have gone off, and so you are not able to connect to the hotspot of the camera. In that case, as you also mentioned, you just have to reset the panoramic camera again, and then you start the process again. But this time round, make sure establishing the connection to your camera. All right, so let's somehow 50 meters from monitoring center. How can I extend my DVR cable? What is an HDMI cable to connect from? What you should do? You can find HDMI cables that are as long as 50 meters. But in case you do not find an HDMI that is 50 meters long, you can as well use network cables like this that come in even 305 meters, that you can buy HDMI connectors and terminate them using the Cat6 cable. I think I will try and create a video on how you can create your own HDMI connection, so that in case you find a situation where you need HDMI connection in a longer distance that you can find an HDMI cable in, you can just do the setup for yourself, creating your own HDMI. So I'll try and do a video on how you can create your own HDMI. This is a type of video balloon, and there are other types that you may find. Video balloons do not necessarily cause the loss of video quality when using video balloon is when you do not combine the cables in using a video balloon very well. Normally, for video balloons that require that you select your power and video cables, I always advise that, for example, this is a network cable, a Cat6 cable that has 4 pairs of conductors. That is the blue pair, the green pair, the brown pair, and then also the orange pair. Transmitting video is not, most of the time, not a difficulty. So you can use just 1 pair of conductor for positive and negative video, while you use the rest 3 for power, because you require a larger cross-sectional area of conductor to transmit power over the network cable. So that is what results mostly in the problems. When you use just maybe a pair of conductors for your power transmission in your network cable, you find it that when the distance from your camera to your recorder is far, you tend to lose video quality, and at times the video may not come at all. You require, what you need to do, or the requirement is that you use at least 2 pairs, and I will always recommend 3 pairs of the network cable to be able to connect your power. In that case, you would have increased the cross-sectional area of your network cable carrying the power, and then the video transmission also becomes problemless. You find less difficulty of problems around your video in your installation. So that is about the video balloon connection. Let's move on to this very first one. This other one is also on the telephone intercom systems, and it says, "Thank you very much, sir." So in that case, I can just run the normal 4 wires and let the telephone detect what to use. Yes, I think this is a follow-up to the very first question that the person sent, or this viewer sent. Yes, you can use just the 4 conductors in the network cable for connecting your telephone system. That is the 2 pairs of conductors. You can use the 2 pairs, and then the system would by itself detect the 2 conductors to use. You don't have to just use 2 of the conductors. In placing the 2 conductors into the RJ11, you might make a mistake and you might place it in the wrong pin. So always use the 4 and you are good to go. The next question says, I really like and appreciate your teachings. Thank you also, Timothy. But I would like to ask why my cameras display lines and keep on losing signal, especially those in like 40 meters plus away from the power supply. Note that the power supply is 10 amps, that is centralized, and I have about 13 cameras. Could it be the cause? Timothy, the problem of quality when it comes to distance is basically the power issues. DC voltage, or voltage that is produced from adapters or 12 DC power, is not meant to be carried along a long distance. And so when you are trying to transmit DC power, which is the 12 volt power required by CCTV cameras, you would have to always look at the shortest distances to travel. If not, you should increase the thickness of the cable that is carrying the 12 volts DC power to your camera. Or you can also practice this method where you create power around your CCTV cameras, especially for cameras that are in long distance, so that you wouldn't have low power transmitted to the camera. And once low power is transmitted to the camera, you realize that it affects the video quality as well. So it is very important when running your cables, when you encounter long distance, create a localized power for your camera, and that will make your video also very clean and sharp. All right, let's move on to the next one. And this one says, I need to use a repeater to connect a switch with 6 cameras to an NVR. What's your best advice? Well, I do not know the reason why you want to use a repeater to connect a switch with 6 cameras to an NVR. Perhaps maybe you are having the cameras that is at very far distance from your NVR. In such a case, I will recommend you use a wireless radio, what is also called CPE. They are able to transmit signals over wireless connectivity. So you can just connect your signal from a switch onto your CPE at one end, and then you place another CPE at another end where the NVR is. And so the CPE will receive the signal into your NVR for you. I have made a video on how you can use a CPE to set up a wireless connection. Maybe you can go to that video, how to use a CPE to set up wireless connection. You can go to that video and look at it again for your understanding. The next one is from a lady called Irene, and the question says, what if we cannot play back after 3 days of using the CCTV? And it's on the panoramic camera. The panoramic camera, as you know, if you have an SD card in place and you cannot find your recordings after 3 days, you should, number one, check whether you have activated recording. That is one of the most likely reasons why you will not have any video footage. And when the recording is going on, you must be able to play it. If it is that your format that the camera has recorded in, you cannot play, it's a different matter. But if you cannot find the recordings, then it means the recording settings are not in place, or you are not recording at all. Or if it stops recording, then you may perhaps have to check the kind of settings you have put in place, whether you have selected that the recording should stop once the SD card is full, and some of those things. So maybe you can link up further. We can have a discussion on exactly what might have caused your inability to play back the cameras. But those are possible things that may be happening, unless there's something else that I'm not aware of. You can let me know further. This one says, good morning, bro. Please, I need your advice on an issue. A large company is in need of CCTV installation, having about 8 warehouses distributed within the premises. Few are far apart from each other. Most importantly, there is a serious network issue in the area. Which system, either analog or IP, would you recommend for the installation? distance between each warehouse is about 80 meters thereabout. Well, the choice of system to use, there are many reasons, or there are many factors that will determine what kind of system to use, whether analog or digital. But in this day and age, hey, my best bet and my best advice will be the use of IP cameras, because they give you the flexibility to maneuver around so many things. So when you use IP cameras, it wouldn't be a bad idea. But you know, IP cameras are expensive when it comes to cost. And so if in terms of cost you want to reduce cost, you can use analog cameras, because you can still use analog cameras that you can create simple or sub networks of cameras where you have multiple DVRs at one location, and you can link up all of them to a central location using a video management software, so that if the company requires that all of the cameras should be monitored at one location, it is possible with a DVR with analog cameras. You can also use IP cameras to achieve the same purpose. So the choice of system may be dependent on financial reasons or any other thing. Both systems will work well. IP cameras, I believe, will work much more better in terms of picture quality and even the volume of work that will be required. IP cameras are simpler and will make even your work less difficult. I would recommend IP cameras, but however, analog cameras will work as well. Let's go to the next question, and this one is saying, there's another question I wanted to ask. Let's say you want to create a central control room far from where those cameras are installed. Is it going to be only the software you will use to remotely control the cameras, or there will be another MVR to help you do the work? No, there will not be need for any NVR at the next location. All you have to have is an internet service together with your VMS software. You create a server, a simple computer server on which you place your VMS, so that you receive your cameras at a remote location. That's all you need. And the second question you are asking is, can the DVR and NVR be seen on VMS interface remotely? Yes. A VMS software is able to identify devices by their remote user ID, or the the cloud CID of the machines. So DVR and NVRs all are given unique cloud CIDs with IP addresses on them. So whether DVR or NVR, they can all be seen on the VMS software. All right, let's move on to the next question, and it says, what's the highest distance before one will start having blurry pictures when using the video balloons? I guess video balloons do not contribute to signal quality. They are just merely interfaces that will enable you to be able to use network cables for setting up HD cameras. And so the issue of picture quality is all dependent on the length of cable you are running. When you run cables beyond 100 meters, you'll expect signal losses or signal degradation problems. And that's why I always advise you limit your distances below 100 meters when running your cables. But when it comes to signal quality, video balloons do not bring about any blurry or degraded signal problem. Let's look at the next question, and this one says, I asked you a question last night about connecting switch wirelessly. This morning I fall onto this video, which is my exact setup. My question is, I want to connect one of the small switches to the main big switch wirelessly. Thank you. When it comes to connecting network switches, and unless the network switch has a wireless receiver or a wireless transmitter, if it doesn't, you cannot connect to it wirelessly. But if you are talking about the fact that one of the switches is at a very far distance, where you will need to establish a remote connection to the switch, what you can do is that you can use maybe a CPE at one location where you tap the switch. Maybe the big switch is at a distant location from the small switch. You can connect the output or the uplink port of the small switch into a CPE, a wireless radio, and then place another wireless radio at the other location where the big switch is, and you can receive the signal from the big switch into the small switch into the big switch through the wireless radio link at the other location. I don't know another day where I'll try to establish a remote distance and try to patch signal from one remote distance to the other for you to see. But basically, when you use a wireless radio or a CPE, that will solve that problem for you. This question says, mine says wrong username and password. I think the wrong username and password is very explanatory. Either your password or username is wrong. You may have to check. You may encounter this kind of problem. And so activate the on. If it is that you are using out camera password or username error, you can just try and find out the correct username and password for your camera and everything will go through. Let's move on to the next one, and it says, thank you so much for the reply. What are your thoughts on using PoE extenders? PoE extenders are good in situations where you are using power over Ethernet cameras and you want to go to a longer distance, more than the 100 meters. PoE extenders can be used. They work perfectly, so you can use them if you have them. My next question says, how do we ensure that there is continuing recording of video throughout the day? Continuing recording throughout the day has to do with making your system or placing your system on override function. Override simply means even if your hard drive is full, the recording should continue whilst deleting older videos. That is, the oldest video should be deleted to make way for new recordings. That is, if you have a system that you want to have continuous recording, that is what you need to do, and your system will continue to record and then continue to delete older videos to make way for new recordings on your hard drive. This is a question coming from Eduardo, and it says, hello, can I enable the call that comes in from the street rings in all extensions? This is a question on telephone intercom systems, or the PBX. And so let me read it again. How can I enable the call that comes in from the street ring in all extensions? So this is a programming setting or a programming language that you can use. In the default settings of PBX systems, I think Panasonic or so, this is a default setting where an outside line call comes and all extensions ring. So that's the default settings. Without even making settings for Panasonic, you have this effect. For some PBX brands, you will have two operator extensions. That is, two extensions. The first two extensions will ring when an outside line call comes in. And so if you want to program those other extensions that do not have all of them ring, you need to refer to the programming manual and choose the CO line incoming call setting. You go to the CO line incoming call setting and you should be able to select or to be able to program such a feature for your PBX. In case you have difficulty programming that, you can just let me know of your PBX brand, and you can give me the programming manual, or I will be able to get the programming manual and I can guide you through to be able to set up that function. The next question comes from Johnson or John, and it says, I'm about to do an installation using 3 PoE switches. So each switch has one uplink port. How do I go about it? It's a Hikvision. I need your support. all you can do is you can have a router that will sit among those three switches, and you can connect a cable, an Ethernet cable from the uplink port of from each of the network switches into the router. So each uplink port will connect to the router, and then you can connect your cameras to each of those PoE switches. Or okay, you started PoE switches, yes, right. You can connect your cameras to the PoE switches whilst the switches are all connected to the router. Or you can also have the uplink ports of each switch connected to the next switch, so you can wire them each into the other. But that kind of connection is sometimes problematic when you have a lot of cameras connected to your switches. You can have network congestions where at times you experience signal timed out on some of your cameras. So the best way is to have a router to which you connect all your switches, so that you can have a smooth network transmission on your network. I have another question here. It says, how much do you charge for the labor of installing a CCTV? There are many factors that contribute to how much you can charge, but I think maybe I'll do a video analysis on the considerations you can do when trying to charge for a CCTV setup. I think we'll do that, and then we'll see the various dynamics. But basically, you want to look at the total project, the distances that you'll be covering, even the kind of cameras you're installing, whether they are analog or IP cameras, they play a role. The distance of cables you'll be running, whether you'll be installing the camera cabling in ceilings, or you'll be doing trunkings that you would have to put the cable in. Those are all factors that would inform your decision as to how much you want to charge. So maybe we'll have a session where we'll discuss how to price up your system. So there's no one way approach or no specific charge that I can tell you now. There are factors you need to consider before you can give a price. There's another question here. It says, I'm currently doing CCTV installation short course. Your videos have been helping me much. Great job, sir. Thank you too. Can you also talk about job opportunities, average pay price, and other information on job market? Well, okay, I well note your point. I would consider it and see what to do. This one says, your power up they using, I think this is not so clear, so I will skip this one. The write-up is not so clear. The understanding is not so much in there. But this is something from Brandon Jordan. I do not get your write-up very well, so please, you may want to send it up again so that I'll consider in next week's episode of your comment segment. And the last question here says, please, can you do video on that for better clarity and understanding? I don't know the video you are referring to, and so I don't quite understand this one too. So Bimbola, please send your question again and indicate exactly what you want me to clarify so that I can take it up from there. All right, so on that note, I thank you so much for your audience. I am so much glad that you joined in this session today, and I'm also always glad coming your way with this viewer comment and answer segment. If you still have questions or comments that you want to bring to my attention, please feel free and send them. But please ensure you subscribe to the channel, and if this video works for you, please give it a thumbs up, and also ensure that you turn on your notification on your channel, on your subscription, so that you can always be notified anytime we come up with something like this. I'm so much glad you joined. See you in the next session. Bye bye.